Did you know that the Lake of Ozarks has more coastline than the state of California? Crazy, right? I mean, that was already unbelievable back in the day, in the 19th century, and that's probably why during the American Civil War you have the different groups of Unionists and Confederates that went there to check, they bumped into one another, and that's how the Battle of Pea Ridge happened. That's totally historically accurate, or not, but worry not. If you don't trust my narrative, then you can play Thunder in the Ozarks, Battle of Pea Ridge, March 1862. That definitely gives you a better understanding of the events. This is a game in the blind sword system. I played other games in the system. First Kernstown, and I fell in love with the system. And then long streak attacks, and now I wanted to try this one. Also, the advantage is when you know the rules for a game in the system, then it's much easier to play the other ones because they largely overlap when it comes to the rules. Two-player games, Union versus Confederates, and the game is also perfectly solitaire-friendly. It is a cheat pool game. That means that there's going to be a lot of randomness, and so if you're playing both sides at the best of your possibilities, then there's still a lot of stuff that will happen that you did not expect, a lot of problems to solve, and interesting twists. And by the way, solitaire, playing both sides, is how I play this game. Now, the game is based on the blind sword system, as I told you, which is a system that I already covered, already described in 2 of my videos. So I don't want to repeat myself, I don't want to give you the full tutorial again. What I'm gonna do is just, I want to recommend, in case you haven't watched my videos, to watch them because they're awesome, so you can watch the videos with the more detailed explanation of the game system. Or here I'll just give you a super quick overview. I think I can give you a gist of the game in about 2 minutes. Let's see if that is the case. Each turn starts with the players alternating with activating artillery units, bang bang, move, attack, that kind of stuff. Then players start drawing chits. There are event chits and different types of chits, but the main chits are divisional chits. Units in the game are divided into divisions and then into brigades. When you draw division chits, you choose a brigade of that division that hasn't activated yet. You mark it as activated, roll a die to see if the units in that brigade will receive a full activation or limited activation. If it's a limited activation, they can only fire. If it's a full activation, they will receive an order which may emphasize movement, attack, rallying, that sort of stuff. Units have a combat factor here, a symbol indicating the type of weapon that they use, and a cohesion rating. The movement factor is not on the unit because it changes based on the order. When units move, well, that they move. That's always time talking about that. Combat is what everybody wants to know about. Combat is always resolved on this table, whether it is fight combat or close combat. It's just different types of modifiers and column shifts. Look up the combat factors of the attackers, apply shifts, roll dice, intersect, and then if the cohesion rating of the lead unit is within the range indicated here, say 6 for this result, yeah, it's in the range, then the defender will have to take a cohesion test of the kind indicated by the color in the background. In this case, for example, it is green. Cohesion tests are taken on these tables here. There is one for fire, one for close combat, and again, the color tells you the section of the table that you use. Roll dice because you have to do it twice. Each cohesion test will have a depletion result to see if your unit is reduced, and a skedaddle result to see where the heck it ends up after the confrontation. Continue like this until the time is almost over, and until the game is over. Victory is based on elimination of enemy units and control of locations on the map. Perfect. Now that you know how to play the game, why don't we take a look at the specific elements that you have in this game, specifically the map or maps. The game comes with 2 paper maps. They are gorgeous paper maps. If you play war games, you may recognize the style of Rick Barber, who either hand draws the maps or makes them look like hand drawn, which is functionally exactly the same. These 2 maps can be put together to play the mega general scenario, which will have 2 fronts, or they can be used individually. There are also 2 individual scenarios, so you can play just the western side or the eastern side. Or again, you can have La Grande Bataille by placing these maps sort of like next to each other, overlapping them a bit. So the situation, whether you're playing a single scenario or you are playing, the big thing is that you will have Confederate forces coming from around here and from around here. The map is pretty busy, forest, ridges, all sorts of messes, but the Confederates are using this road here, coming down from this road here. And when you set up the Union forces, you think, wait, did I forget something that there has to be a mistake because there are so few on the map. And this is the general idea. The Union forces will have to hold on to their resources, faith in a higher destiny, because the first couple of turns will be tough, especially on this side of the map. So the Unions have to resist while they're waiting for reinforcements that will come, maybe too late, maybe not, from this area here. And then the Union player will want to rush them close to the front as fast as possible, while the Confederate player will probably want to exploit their advantage in numbers, trying to turn flanks early on and just to inflict some very severe damage. If you play the scenario with the two maps, with all of the units on the board, of course, then there's the possibility of moving from one front to the other. Again, in this case, the Confederate player is probably going to have more fun doing that because it is a Confederate player that, especially early on, has more units, and so moving units from one front to the other, trying to outflank the poor, vexed Union defenders is just something that is likely to happen and is also very fun to do. In general, this is what the map looks like, and in general, this is how it works. The scenarios work. I just wanted to give you a closer look again at the painstakingly detailed art on the maps, I mean. And now to the conclusions. Thunder in the Ozarks. So I liked it. This system has not failed me yet. This is the third game that I play in the system, the third game that I thoroughly enjoy. And I also enjoy, although I'm not playing them in the right order, I can still see that each game had a different emphasis and each game shone at doing something different and really presenting you different situations. So from Kernstown, it was about really low density with long streak attacks. It was about a much higher density of units on the board. It was about difficult terrain. It was about units that got in each other's way, so about the struggle of maneuvering these big formations. And then in the Ozarks, well, the new thing for me, although you may have experienced it chronologically differently, is the double front, which is interesting, especially if you're playing, of course, the Grand Battle, in which you have the two fronts, or you can play the two single front battles separately, which still feel different from one another because of terrain, which is much more complicated to deal with on the eastern side, and so bringing the artillery to bear, figuring out what the heck to do with the cavalry, those are different challenges. The other side, the terrain is a little less prohibitive, but the contest there is more unequal for the poor Union player who is really gonna suffer the first couple of turns. I guess a smashing early Confederate victory is possible. I haven't seen it, but it's so hard. It can get so almost desperate for the Union player on that side that's entirely possible. So you have the maps that look similar at first sight, but actually they work differently from one another. You have different flows because of the contest being uneven on both sides, but not at the same degree of madness, I would say. So it's an interesting historical situation, one that actually I haven't played very often in wargaming, so always fun to explore it. Always fun to explore it in a system that I played before, because I'm a low wargaming, but I'm still not a big fan of reading long manuals of rules. That's just the way I am. Some people think it's a great literary genre. To me, it's a pain in the neck having a system, which I like very much, with all the randomness, with all the fog of war, with all of the activations that you don't know where going to happen, such a solitaire-friendly system, yet with a lot of detail, a lot of circle flavor. Having a system that I like and that I can port from game to game, and so I can just breeze through the manual for when I play a new game in the system. I still read the manual, but not with the same degree of dread and pain. To me, that's a great advantage. I'm so happy I found the blind source systems because I already played 3 games. I like all of them. I like the commonalities that they have. A strong system, really fun flow. Again, random activation with small groups, so there's a constant back and forth. There's a constant action going on. It's like, oh, I have to move this entire group before somebody else can do something else. The commonalities are great. And then each game has its own identity that makes it different, so it doesn't feel like the system is redundant. Here we have those 2 fronts, which are fun when played separately and even more interesting when you have the possibility of moving from one front to the other, especially for the Confederate player. So Thunder in the Ozarks, I definitely enjoyed it just as much as enjoyed the other games in the system. I don't know which is my favorite one that I played so far, but definitely this is a strong candidate.